Hello everyone and welcome. We'll wait a couple more minutes for the latecomers before we start. Okay, I think we can get started and whoever joins in the meantime. So good morning everybody. On this beautiful day, I would like to welcome you at our 6th and last SINFONIA Smart Talks webinar on data for citizens using sensors and interactive totems to provide smart urban services, which we are organizing in close cooperation with URAC and the Municipality of Bolzano. My name is Martin Strolani, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm working for Greenovate Europe, which is a European expert group dedicated to eco-innovation. This webinar is organized by the SINFONIA project, where Greenovate Europe is responsible for the communication and dissemination of the project results. You can view the recordings of the previous webinars via the links, which will be soon displayed on the screen. Benedict, can you put the next slide, please? Yeah. Yeah, now you can see the links to the previous webinars at the bottom of the screen. We've had, as you can see, already 5 chapters, so don't hesitate to have a look. We also had a final SINFONIA conference at the end of June. It is also available on our website and on YouTube, so if you have a look at the links, you can find it there as well. This final conference presented the main results and ambitions, as well as future plans of SINFONIA partners and our cities, so it's definitely of interest, so don't hesitate to have a look. And the majority of you have already participated in the previous webinars and are familiar with the project, but I will still say a few words about SINFONIA for those who don't know it, just to be sure that you know what the project is about. So the SINFONIA started in 2014 and was funded by the FP7 program. It's actually one of the last, if not the last project, which is funded by the 7th framework program for research and development. It will end on July 31st, so we are very close to the end of the project. And it's coordinated by RISE, the Research Institutes of Sweden. It is a large project with more than 30 partners and 43 million in terms of budget. The total of 27 million was provided by the European Commission as subsidy. So you can imagine it's a very, very big project. In our case, we have 2 lighthouse cities, or in FP7, they are called pioneer cities. We have Bolzano and Innsbruck, which have been implementing innovative large-scale energy solutions and measures in terms of energy refurbishment, district heating, cooling, electricity grid. Some of the activities of the first named, Bolzano, will be presented today. The main goals of the project were from 40 to 50% of primary energy savings, and also the increase of the share of renewable energies by 20%. We also had several follower cities. We had a total of 5 follower cities from different climatic conditions and different parts of Europe. We have Boras from Sweden, Paphos from Cyprus, Seville from Spain, La Rochelle from France, and Rosenheim from Germany. Also, SINFONIA has coordinated a so-called application cluster with more than 47 cities involved in it from all around Europe. These 47 cities were following a little bit less closely the activities of the project and also participated in some of the events. Besides demonstration, SINFONIA has also been developing a lot of decision support tools for smart cities. Some of these tools are available and open and free of use, so I invite you to see our webpage and to have a look. I strongly believe that some of them could be of use and of interest to you. As already mentioned, today's webinar is focused on smart urban services deployed in the city of Bolzano, which is one of the first smart cities in Italy. Within the framework of SINFONIA, the municipality collaborated with research centers and private companies to design and implement an urban service-oriented sensible grid that will improve mobility and expand the services offered to citizens. This will be further explained and presented by our speakers in a few minutes. But before we get really started, just a couple of technical remarks. The webinar is being recorded today. Both the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be shared shortly after the webinar. You are in listening only mode, but after each presentation, we'll have a short space for questions. The questions can be either sent in writing through the question box you see at any time during the presentations, or asked orally by clicking on the raise hand button you can see on your control panel. And once you click on the button, I will give you the floor when the time comes so that you can ask them. You can ask questions or raise hand at any time. As I said, they will be answered, or you will be given floor to ask them orally at the end of each presentation. Now, just let me shortly present you to our speakers. So we are more than pleased to have three wonderful speakers today. We'll start off with Brunella Francini, who is already ready, and from the Transport Office of the Municipality of Bolzano, who will speak about the concept and implementation of smart points deployed in Bolzano. Then the floor will be given to Adriano Bisello, Senior Researcher at URAC. Adriano will talk about assessing the interest and willingness of citizens to multifunctional interactive totems. And finally, we'll close our webinar with a presentation from Pietro Zambelli, a Senior Researcher at URAC, who will give insights into multi-criteria analysis for the positioning of integrated infrastructures. Without further ado, I'm giving the floor to the first speaker, Brunella Francini from the Transport Office of the Municipality of Bolzano, to tell us more about the concept and the implementation of smart points. Brunella, over to you, so you can share your screen as soon as you feel comfortable.
Sorry, I start again. Do you hear me now? Yes. So first,
Yes.
I would like to give an overview of the architecture of our traffic management center because it collects and manages all data about traffic lights, cameras, variable message panels, traffic detectors, origin destination sensor, and meteorological stations. And also the parking guide system. This system was still working in the city of Bolzano before the SINFONIA project started. And that's why we tried to introduce with the SINFONIA project new technologies that were compatible with this system in order to increase it with new technologies, but also be able to use them after the end of this specific project. In the frame of SINFONIA project, we had a budget dedicated for this smart point grid, composed by traffic and environmental sensors, but also services for the community. In order to choose the type of sensors and services and to find the best position for them, we needed a previous study of the situation and needs. This study was done by URAC and will be exposed by the colleagues of URAC afterwards. They did an analysis of the urban area, of the distribution of critical points like critical situations due to traffic congestions and air quality. And also an analysis of the urban area and the distribution of points of interest in order to distribute services for tourists and also for citizens. Like charging stations that are already installed or points of interest for citizens and tourists like bars, restaurants, train stations, bus stations, the hospital, and so on. For our smart points, we had a budget of about 400,000 euros. And this map shows the distribution of each type of component. So the smart points grid was composed by traffic detectors, variable message panels, bike detectors, an intelligent lighting system, Bluetooth detectors, a weather and environmental monitoring system, and then 3 interactive multifunctional totems. All these elements were distributed on the base of the results of the previous studies and are all connected with our management center of the municipality. So we installed 4 monitoring stations along the cycling lanes. These stations collect data about the number of cyclists that travel through this route and are very useful for the mobility office for future planning, but also to understand the effects of cycling policies. These panels also show the number of cyclists in real time and give information about the most crowded day. So it's therefore an important tool also for communication. For traffic monitoring, we installed 6 monitoring stations and 26 Bluetooth detectors. The 6 traffic monitoring stations collect data about number of vehicles, speed, type of vehicles, and the 26 Bluetooth detectors are a very cheap system that detects Bluetooth on board of vehicles, and so gives useful information about the journey time on specific routes. These 2 systems combined are very useful for long-time traffic planning, but also for real-time traffic monitoring. And the collected data are combined with the communication to drivers through these variable message panels. They were installed and give information in real time with instructions about the best route, so in order to avoid traffic congestions in case of accidents or other special events. We also installed an air quality monitoring station. This is a very compact station that measures air pollution and also collects meteorological data, for example, temperature and relative humidity, wind speed, global solar radiation. With the SINFONIA project, an intelligent lighting system was installed along a bicycle lane along the river Isarco in a green area of the city. You see it in this picture. This lane is an important connection to the residential area of the city, but it's also very isolated because it's along the river, and especially during the evening and night, it's not so safe. This smart lighting system gives a higher light level when a cyclist is arriving and a lower light level when nobody's there, with detectors put along this lane. In this way, energy saving is combined with safety for cyclists. You see here the architecture of this system, the smart lighting system of the Algorab. Each lamp has a control unit and receives through this control unit instructions from the control center about when to turn on and how much dim the light intensity. In addition, the lamp communicates at the center its operating parameters, including any faults. And it also enables the creation of a platform to supply other services. Here you can see some screenshots of the software that gives information about the position of each lamp and also the operating parameters for each lamp. Some other pictures about the installed hardware, so detectors on the access tracks and the control units that were installed on the lamps. The other important elements that compose the smart points are three interactive and multifunctional totems. So each one of them contains a lot of services from charging facilities to touch screens with a lot of informations. The project of these totems was developed by the Department of Industrial Design of the UAV University. Because it was very important to elaborate a design that could be innovative, identifiable, but in the same time producible with an industrial process and also that could be replicable. Here you see the first time of the totems, of the three totems, which was projected for a parking area. So it contains charging point for e-cars, also charging facilities for smartphones or other devices, an SOS point, and two interactive touch screens. And in the picture, you also see where it was installed in Victoria Square in the near of a parking area. The second one, the second type, is the totem designed for a urban area. The design is similar to the other one in order to be identifiable. But the services are adapted to the location. In this case, with a charging facility for e-bikes, an e-bike pump instead of the e-charging point, and it also has two touch screens and the SOS point. As you see in the picture, this totem was installed in a new square of the city, in one of the most recent part of the city. The third type is the totem for a green area, designed for a green area. This totem was installed along the river Isarco near the bicycle lane. It has a touch screen, one city map with all the cycling routes, charging facilities for e-bikes, also a bike pump, and charging facilities for other devices, and an SOS point. All these totems are also suitable for the further installation of Wi-Fi or LoRaWAN. The construction process of these totems was very complex. You see in this picture the original project. This project should be adapted for the industrial production with a good cooperation between designers, producer, and the municipality. At the end, we was able to produce these totems, and you see them installed in these pictures. This one is the type A, the totem for a parking area. We installed them last week, and this one was installed in Victoria Square. In the second picture, you see the totem type P, the type for a urban area, which was installed in Montessori Square in this new part of the city. And in the third picture, you see the totem for a green area, which was installed along the river Isarco near the bicycle lane. Finally, I would like to show a couple of slides about the content of these interactive screens of the 3 totems. They are touch screens, and through these touch screens, people, citizens, tourists become information about mobility, environment, weather, events in the city, other tourist informations, and also useful apps. All the information are in Italian, German, and English. You see here an example about the topic mobility. Each topic contains infos that can be useful for citizens or tourists. Mobility, for example, provides info about cycling, public transport, e-mobility, sharing mobility. This page shows our bike sharing service, for example. And finally, other 3 examples about weather forecasts, events in the city, and useful apps that you can use also without our totems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bruna, for this presentation. And now if there are any questions, do not hesitate to write them down. We have one question, but it was more in the beginning when we started talking about the totems. Raj Kumar asked, what is the totem and what is its function? But I think that you answered it afterwards, so I don't think you need to repeat it again. In the meantime, I will ask a question from my side. So what are the most important opportunities that the Smart Points project gave to the Municipality of Bolzano, in your point of view?
So I think this project gave us the opportunity to try new technologies. We still had this traffic management center, but with SINFONIA project, we could approach so new technologies and not only traditional ones. We had also the opportunity to introduce something innovative in the city, like these multifunctional totems that can also be replicated in other parts of the city, or also in other. And it was also an opportunity, I think, of cooperation between various offices of the municipality. That was also a very good thing.
Definitely. Now we have another question from Raj Kumar. What was the response of the citizens at city level? Do you have any feedback on it, on the totems and on the totems?
Yeah, on the totems, not because we installed them
yeah, just recently. Yeah.
week, and so we are waiting for a response. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we will have the first response from citizens.
And what about the COVID-19 pandemic? How it influenced, the planning of this project? Because I know that you've been deploying it in the last months, so I think it must have been quite difficult because of that.
Yes, of course.
Well, I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll give the floor to our next speaker, Adriano, who is definitely ready. So, Adriano, I think you will be able to share the screen now, hopefully. Yes.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Thank you for giving the floor, and thank you to Brunella for introducing us to the topic of the smart points and the totem. Just let me check. Do you already see the screen?
Yes, yeah, we can see it. Yeah, we can see your emails.
Okay, perfect. So you see everything. I can open up this one. Okay, now we should be on the right place.
Yes, now we can see it perfectly.
Perfect. Just let me rearrange a bit all the windows with our nice faces, and I will start with the presentation. Okay. So good morning again. I will try to introduce a bit one of the research exercise that has been done before deciding the functions and the layout of the totems, because the question that has been posed before, what is a totem and what are the functions of the totem, was exactly the same that came to the mind of the most of the people hearing for the first time about this innovative infrastructure and innovative concept of the totem and the smart points within the context of a smart city. I will not spend additional words on the project that has been already introduced by Martin. I will just give you a couple of additional information about the city of Bolzano, that is the capital city of the South Tyrol. It's, let's say, a small, medium-sized city, but characterized by a very high quality of life, let's say a high income on average in comparison to the Italian situation, and has a quite good track in terms of green action, sustainable lifestyle, and it's well oriented toward the green tourists and green tourism action. Since many years, they have a local producer of e-bikes before the e-bikes started to be something very fashion and a trending topic in our discussion. They are going to sustain the local private electromobility through the local energy provider. In the city, we also have some hydrogen buses that are going around the territory that are quite innovative. So there are a lot of initiatives concerning green mobility and similar. And also, since many years, let's say, there are around the city, as we saw in the slide projected by Brunella, some points that already collect information and also report this information to the citizens and to the tourists in terms of mobility, in terms of air pollution and similar. And more specifically, the points related to the smart point design and installation was one of the main measures in the SINFONIA project about the electricity grid and the smart grid creation. So when we started with this research exercise a couple of years ago, we had to answer some specific questions. So the first was, do people will like smart points or totem providing information and services? That was, of course, the basic question to answer. And what could be the most important and relevant information and services to be included in the totem? And last but not least, is there a willingness to pay to assess this information and services. We did also some preliminary consideration before starting the research. It was a sort of self-assessment of the current situation. That was good because the topic of the smart city and sustainable development are quite well known around the city and the local population. We had the opportunity to work within the SINFONIA project in Bolzano that is offering a real case study and implementation. On the other hand, smart points and Totem are very innovative, so there is no a market for this new integrated infrastructure. So we have to assess and to estimate the value of the infrastructure outside the normal rules of traded goods and services. So we decided to run this investigation using the so-called choice experiment method. And I will tell you something more in the next slide. But basically, the choice experiment works by drafting a specific questionnaire, an interview, in interviewing a relevant sample of potential users to be identified within the geographical location where we are supposed to install the totem. So in this case, the city of Bolzano. We define it as another weight sample around 200 interviewed respondents. And after collecting the interviews, of course, you have to elaborate the results by using the appropriate elaboration methods in order to gain the final information. And the most important thing in this case, the final result of the choice experiment method is to define the so-called willingness to pay. The willingness to pay is the maximum price at which a consumer will buy a product or a service. And the nice thing is that using the choice experiment method, you can simulate a market, although this kind of service or product is not usually sold or traded on a real market. Just to put my words into some concrete examples. For example, what is the value of a telecare program that helps elderly people to live independently at home? Or how much would you pay to avoid the hassle of spam email? Or what is the economic value of a river with crystalline waters? So these services, these natural elements or technological elements are sometimes not on the market because they cannot be on the market, or they are not yet on the market because there are new services that are coming, and you have to define what could be the theoretical willingness to pay of people to access this service. Or in other cases, how much is worth the energy efficiency in buildings? So what is the marginal value, for example, for moving to the G, the worst class of a building, to the best class, the A, having theoretically two equal buildings, only differing from the energy class? So that are tricky questions to answer. And we are quite happy because there are some techniques that help us in answering this question. I don't want to enter into detail, but I will just to mention that there are basically two families of techniques, the so-called revealed preferences and stated preferences. We are actually working with the choice experiment in the field of the stated preferences, so that are based on what respondents, so people that you have to interview, to physically interview, what they state and answer in specific questionnaires. So the choice experiment is one of the possible techniques within the stated preferences method that are used to evaluate non-market goods. The methods to analyze the questionnaire are can be different. Within the possible method, we decided to use these two, the multinomial logic model and the mixed logic model. I don't want again to enter into details, but if you are interested, there are publications on this point, and you will find all the detail there. The main difference is that with the first, the MNL, you cannot capture the heterogeneity of the respondents. So it's like all the respondents are similar. In the second case, the mixed logic, it is possible to compute for the individual parameters. So to better understand why different persons have different expectations. In any case, the relevant point is that the willingness to pay is a ratio between a coefficient of non-monetary attributes, that in this case are the services available at the totem, and a monetary attribute, a cost of this service. Entering more in practice, we identified a set of attributes working together with the municipality of Bolzano and brainstorming a bit with our colleagues. And we identified this set of attributes. So theoretically, we saw the totem could provide emergency call service, having it or not, so yes or no, providing drinkable water, providing hotspot Wi-Fi connection, providing a charging station that could be, in the first case, only available to charge devices as a tablet or smartphone, or these kind of devices plus electric bicycle, or let's say a third, more complicated level of service, allowing to charge devices, bicycle, and vehicles. And similarly, some possible levels concerning the attribute information could be information about weather and environmental condition of the air, information about touristic and cultural events, or information for residents to interact with the public offices. And some services related to mobility, as for example, knowing the availability of charging points for vehicle, the traffic condition, or the availability of parking spaces. And we defined some possible costs, let's say a monthly fee, a theoretical monthly fee that you have to assess, to pay to assess this infrastructure and these services. And we did some hypotheses, and we defined a cost ranging from €0.5 a month to €3 a month. That was a theoretical cost. We arranged the so-called choice card, and we asked people through this interview to identify within 3 possible options, option 1, option 2, and option 3, combining different services or level of service and related cost, to identify the preferred, the best option, or the worst option, comparing option 1, option 2, and option 3. Every respondent has to do this exercise 8 times, so comparing 8 choice cards, each one having 3 different options. You see that option 1 and option 2 are 2 possible configurations of a theoretical totem. In this case, for example, option 1, the totem has no SOS emergency call service, while option 2 has this service. Similarly, option 1 has the Wi-Fi connection service, while option 2 hasn't. And they have different costs. The third option was having less services and without paying any kind of fee. So, as I said, we asked to the interviewed people looking at the three alternatives, what is the best and what is the worst. We interviewed more than 200 people around the city, so residents, students, tourists. We try to have a good balance in terms of gender composition, in terms of mother tongue language. We try to intercept the different range of age and education profile in order to ensure a representative of the sample. And let's go to the most interesting part of the presentation, the results, of course. So the first question was, do people like smart points or totem providing this information and services? Of course, during the interview, we had to provide them some additional information about the concept of smart city, about the concept of totem. We also shown them some example of similar totems installed all around the world. And finally, the answer was yes. So the first relevant point is that people in Bolzano is willing to have the smart points, theoretically, because the status quo situation, that means the actual situation before the installation of the totem, so without the totem, was not significant under a statistical point of view. So people prefer to have a totem in a certain configuration in comparison to not having the totem at all. The first question, what are the most significant information and services that should have been included in the design of the totem? You see here this column with all these asterisks. They represent the statistically significance of the answer. In the majority of the case, you see a lot of asterisks. This means that the statistical analysis was good. And in particular, the most relevant services emerged as the emergency call service, also having drinkable water, Wi-Fi connection, integrated charging points for devices, for car and for bikes, and the full service concerning information. So information about weather, air pollution, touristic information, and information for residents. And also very relevant has been found the possibility to have information about the mobility, parking spaces, traffic situation, available charging points, and similar. And the third relevant question about the willingness to pay to access these services have found a good answer, because the coefficient of our analysis, let's say the estimate that are in the first column, are all positive. And you see that the highest coefficients are related to the only one that is negative is the cost. What does it mean? That more you pay and less happy, less interested to the service are you. And this is quite straightforward result, because if the service has a too much high price, no one will access the service. But on the contrary, they are willing to pay something to be able to interact with the totem to access the service. And the most relevant points, so the highest price that they are willing to pay is, for example, €1.5 a month to access the Wi-Fi hotspot, €1.80 to access the charging service, the integrated charging service, and more or less a similar amount to access the information. That it means that theoretically combining all the features, they are willing to spend about 7-8 months euro to assess this infrastructure. And this is relevant as a result, considering that we are offering something quite new, innovative, and in some way a little bit difficult to be imagined in a first approach with the interviewer. I mentioned it before that we analyzed the results using two different methods, the multinomial logit and the mixed method logit model. Basically, the results are quite similar. We can say that this second method is to be preferred because this parameter is lower. What does this mean in practice? That the preference heterogeneity has a significance. So we should go more in detail to understand what are the services that are preferred by a certain typology of user, let's say, for example, the students, or what are the services that are preferred by another category of users. That could be the tourist or the elderly people, or more educated or less educated people. So that means that in case we will extend the amount of totem around the city, or to change some services, we can look more in detail to the specific expectation of the different typology of users. So to conclude and to wrap up what we understood during our investigation, we answered the question about the interest of people, of citizens and the tourists about the smart point, the totem. Yes, there is an interest about this infrastructure, because in any case, they prefer to have a totem in comparison to the actual situation that was not having the totem at all. The most significant services to be provided, expected by the respondents, are services about Wi-Fi connection, about mobility, and as an integrated service about charging points that will allow you to charge the devices, the bike or the electric vehicle. And there is a willingness to pay to assess this service. So let's say that theoretically that could be also this infrastructure could be a way to gain some money, to have some money back, to for example to afford the maintenance and operation expenditure of this infrastructure. That has to be taken into account, of course, by the municipality. This investigation has been done, of course, by me and some other colleagues, so Silvia Tomasi and Gianluca Grilli of UREC, with the relevant support of the municipality of Bolzano. If you are willing to have more detailed information about the methods, there is this publication available and other materials that are within the deliverables of the SINFONIA project. And that's all from my side, and I will be happy to answer your question in case, and I hope you found this presentation interesting and helpful to better understand how we decided to include some services in this new infrastructure of the Totem. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adriano, and I can confirm you that it helped me understand how and why you deployed these technologies. So thank you very much. And now we have some space for questions, so don't hesitate to ask or to write them down. In the meantime, if I understand correctly, the services are free of charge as of now. So why do you evaluate the willingness to pay? For example, do you intend to make it some pay for? Like, is it gonna be free of charge in the future, or will people have to pay for it, for example, in the upcoming years or months?
Yes, let's say that this is one of the main points of this kind of investigation, the choice experiment method. Because the decision to leave the infrastructure free or to be assessed using a monthly subscription of similar, it's up to the municipality, of course. But if you have to present some alternative to the citizen, and you have in some way to force them to decide and to declare what is the preferred alternative, you have also to force them to think about the money that you have to pay to assess this service. Otherwise, the answers that you will connect will be a nonsense. Because on one hand, all the people will be keen to answer that they will prefer the much more complex situation with all the services and all the stuff inside, although maybe they will never use this kind of services. And so you will not gain meaningful information, because the final result will be that people in Bolzano are willing to have a very complicated infrastructure offering any kind of possible service, but the municipality has to provide this service, has to pay, to maintain. So the only possibility to understand what is in practice the interest is to force them to think about, if I have to pay for this service, will be happy to do that or not, up to a certain level.
Yeah, definitely, I agree, and it must cost a lot of money to the city also to to deploy these technologies and to, as you say, to maintain it. So that's relevant.
Yes, it's as you will be in the position to choose between a small car or a very luxury, a Tesla car, brand new car, without knowing that you have to pay 2 different prices. You will choose probably the Tesla.
I guess
even though
so.
you probably don't need it, because you need just an electric scooter to go working.
In the meantime, you had 3 questions. So I will start with the first one from Raj Kumar. What are the main challenges that you had to face to implement this kind of project at ground level?
I'm not sure to understand the meaning of the question. If it was referring to the data collection, so interviewing people, it was very challenging, because approaching people around the street with a quite long questionnaire that was in the end more than a quarter, so 20 minutes questionnaire, because you have to introduce the topic, to collect information about gender, age, income, preferences. That was quite challenging. So collecting 200 questionnaires was not easy at all, but was the minimum amount to have some statistical significance of the exercise. Of course, because let's say URAC, it's a trustable institution, we had the possibility to go around the city with the badge and to intercept people without having been banned at the first time from all the people.
Yeah, that definitely helped, I guess. So you partially answered the next question, because I also wanted to ask it actually. There's another question concerning the interviews. So how were they conducted? It was only by questionnaires, really, like on the ground, catching people like by chance, accidentally, or also there were other techniques like phone calls or?
No, we decided to have face-to-face interviews with this questionnaire, so guiding people during the filling of the questionnaires, to be sure that we targeted in this small amount of interviews a relevant sample of different potential users, from students, university students, tourists, and For that reason, we also translated the questionnaire in Italian, in German, that is the other official language, and in English too, because to intercept some tourists, it was needed. It was quite challenging, but so we success in some way.
And how much time did it take you to gather all these 200 feedbacks or questionnaires?
It was more than 1 month with 2 or 3 people on the field.
All right.
Because also for the interviewer, it's very it's challenging because it's a very stressful activity. It requires a lot of concentration, and if you receive some no please, you will be soon frustrated. So collecting more than 5 interview in a single day, it's enough to do a good job.
Having done it myself, I know that it's not an easy task convincing people to get some feedback on something in the street.
Yes, sometimes it's the most challenging part, because designing the experiment, it's let's say choice experiment. It's a very well-known technique. There are a lot of handbook on that. You have to follow the rules. You have to do a preliminary test. We tested with some colleagues and people working around URAC 20 questionnaires in the beginning, and we analyzed these 20 questionnaires to in some way to correct some bugs and to reduce the amount of questions, to shorten the interview time. So it was needed to don't fail on the practical exercise. And yes, but collecting the data, it's the most critical part. Analyzing it takes some time, but collecting good data, it's the central point to have some relevant information.
Now we have one last question before giving the floor to Pietro. So Umu Rahayu asks, thanks for the presentations. What do you think about implementing this technology in a developing country where people's understanding about green lifestyle is not so good?
I think that in case of different countries with different expectation, you just have to correct the typology of services that you are offering. For example, we had the result that the drinkable water could be an interesting service for people, but on the other side, Bolzano has a good amount of drinkable public fountains around the city, so that was not needed to complicate things introducing the drinkable water in the totem. But in other cases could be much more relevant, or for example the emergency call in case people around don't have cell phones or mobile phones to call in case of emergency.
Yes, it would have to be adapted to the local case, and I find it interesting because it's really conceived based on people's needs and expectations, which is very good. So there's real citizen engagement there, which I find very, very useful. All right, so now we'll move on to the next and last presentation from Pietro Zambelli from URAC, who will give us some insights into a multi-criteria analysis for the positioning of integrated infrastructure. You can see that Pietro is there. Hi, Pietro. The floor is yours.
Hi, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so hello, everyone. Today, I want to present to you the work that we performed to then identify the best location for the different services and the different sensors, as already presented by Brunella, and also for the Totem by Adriano. There were a lot of different services, and we want to identify the best place where we should install or use a certain technology. And to do this, we have to analyze to understand first which were the data available on one end that we can imagine to use. On the other end, we have also to we have several meetings with, in particular, with the Municipality of Bolzano to define, for instance, for the sensor related to the mobility, or to count the number of people that are cycling on the within a certain path, or that are just like a pedestrian. So to identify which parameters were more relevant for that, and so we identify four main points. Let's say that. So we split all the sensors that we want to install within the city of the Municipality of Bolzano in four main areas. Let's say. So we have a first topic that was the weather condition, so that we want to better understand the quality of the outdoor condition, basically. Then we have a mobility aspect. So as already mentioned by Brunella, so we have the traffic congestions, the condition of the cycle paths or the other pedestrian route, let's say. And then we also want to include service or info services for citizens, as mentioned already. And so where is the best place where we should put this kind of information in the urban areas. And the last point that we investigated was the safety and security issue. Even if Bolzano is one of the lowest, the city with the lowest criminality in the north of Italy, so the condition is pretty safe, let's say. But this was also something that rise from the questionnaires and the activities with the citizens. So the perception of the security was not really high, and so we want to understand where the issue could be. So for each of these topics, let's say we identify some list of service or sensors that we want to install. And so for the weather condition, we want to collect the solar radiation, the humidity, temperature, precipitation, and pressure. So just the weather condition. For the mobility, we were interested in the air quality. So in particular, we want to collect nitrogen dioxide or oxide and particle matter, just to characterize the air quality and the issue connected with the mobility sector, let's say. And then we want to install a congestion monitoring, the occupancy of parking lots, understand the electric vehicle charging station, where they are and where they could be installed as well. As said, the info display and the car plate identification for routing monitoring. That was also something required by the municipality to further improve the mobility plan for the city, and other innovative tracking system for instance, the use of the Bluetooth tools. And for the info services, the idea is to provide this service for pedestrians. So like in commercial areas or in parking areas, the information that should be provided are like public transportation, car sharing, weather forecast, and other cultural events like a concert, theater, etc. And then the other information that are considered useful are like where are the availability of parking lots or recharge the cell phone, etc. These are all the let's say topic that was evaluated and are already discussed by Adriano before. And then we have these SOS points and cameras to provide a safer place or to be able to call an to rise an emergency call when needed. So the approach that we follow was to use a spatial multi-criteria analysis, where we, for the spatial multi-criteria analysis, we in particular use the analytical hierarchical process-oriented with a weighted average. So this method basically is pairing each criteria to define a ranking of a weighted ranking of the criteria among different experts. So to be more clear, what we did for each of the services that we want to include into and consider to insert in the urban infrastructure, we define a list of possible criteria. So, for instance, it could be for the air quality, the concentration of nitrogen dioxide and the concentration of particle matter, so that we want to understand where are the most critical part of point in the city, or it could be just a distance from the nearest air quality station that is already existing and present in the municipality. So there were several criteria that we discussed before with the expert. Then we apply this pairwise comparison between the different points that were made by the expert. And so for each sector, we were for each topic, we were able to get the list of the criteria and the weight that we have to apply for the criteria to identify the best location for the different tasks. So as said, we include the result. This is the average nitrogen dioxide concentration with a high resolution for Bolzano, and here we have the particle matter, the average particle matter for always Bolzano. The data were provided by CISMA, this local company supporting the analysis for the municipality as well as for the whole region on this topic. For the mobility electric vehicles, we follow a similar approach, but was a dedicated work where we apply again the multi-criteria to select the electric vehicles best place, let's say. And here the criteria or the different layers that we consider were like distance from attractive activities like a museum, pub, or other activities that can attract people, shopping activities as well. To better understand which were the most important point in the city. As you can see here, we have, of course, the city center of Bolzano, that is in this area. It is really rich of activities. but the focus of SINFONIA was in 2 other districts that are in this part of the city and on the other side of the river. So we focus on these 2 areas. Then we collect and analyze the congestion monitoring data to identify the critical points, let's say, that are present in the city, and to use as an informative layer as well when we talk about where we should put the mobility sensor to collect the number of the counter, let's say, of people using a certain street route, let's say, and this was also used to select which where we should put the display for traffic routing. So where is the key point for where we are able to move part of the traffic from one route to another route. So to decrease the congestion in a dynamically way, to decrease the congestion or the pressure, let's say, in a certain area. And again, this kind of display can enable very interesting management of the traffic, because we can implement logic connecting not only concerning the congestion, so the traffic itself, but also the air quality or other criteria that could be useful for the city management, let's say, so that the city is able to somehow influence the traffic and the use of the main routes on their cities. So this was the aims, and so we analyze the data for that. And for the info display and pedestrian, we consider and weighted a lot of different activities that are present in the school. So in the city. So we consider like the schools because they are an attractor of people, and there are a lot of people that wait outside the school for the children, etc. So it could be one of the place that we should consider. But there are also bar, restaurant that are used, theater, museum, and and also we consider the bus station and the other public transport system as something that we should prefer to be close to one of these when we allocate the place, let's say. So or parking slots, let's say. So this is the map again. The city center of Bolzano is where we have the higher, but this was not the focus of the project. So we just go through the other place. And in this slide, you can also see the buildings that we renovate within the project. We did a refurbish of these buildings just to give you an idea where they are located in the city of Bolzano. And another information was the street lights that are present in the cities, and also the visibility between the different street lights, because we consider to put some camera to monitor the traffic. So we want to understand which would be the visibility of a single street light so that can cover. So to select, let's say, the best street light that can cover the larger area in a certain place in the city. And another important analysis was to assess the total level of security, let's say, in the city. In particular, we just focus on pedestrian and cycle route, because generally people that are in the car feel already safe, so that there is not this need. So we just focus on this area. So here, with the color, you can see all the pedestrian and cycle routes that are available in Bolzano. And for each of these, we compute an indicator, let's say, that gives us or highlight us where there are some hotspots for let's say, a possible feeling to be not safe in that place during the evening, let's say, hours. And for the last point that we consider was the weather conditions. So as mentioned, we aim to understand where we should put the weather condition station, and the other question that we have in mind was how much representative the information of this weather station is. So which is the land around of this point that is actually represented by the weather station. So what we did was to analyze the land use of the city, so the presence of building, the quantity of green area, the type of green area, if it's a high tree or if it's just a brush or we have just a grass area. So so what we did was clusterize all the landscape, let's say, and but we also integrate with the solar radiation, so we take into consideration the shadowing between the different buildings and different elements present in the city. So yeah, with the distance from the river, because there is an influence, strong influence for the condition, let's say, weather condition, the microclimatic condition to the river. So we also include this kind of variable. And then we then combine all these and we identify some possible point for the creation of the totem that include several of the services that we presented already. And basically, yes, this was the activities and the analysis that we performed for the municipality of Bolzano, and involving all the experts that were needed to define the weight of different layers, let's say, informative layers. I hope that the presentation was interesting for you, and I'm open if you have any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Pietro. And yes, any questions are welcome also for Brunella and Adriano. And I can see that we have some questions. There's one person who raised hand, so I guess he will want to ask it orally. It's Umu Rahayu, so I give you the floor now, Umu. Now you should be able to unmute yourself and ask it if you are still there. Well, in that case, we'll go to written questions. So the first one is, what is your comment to implement this kind of project in a large city with a large population or a small city with a large population?
Do you think the question is for me, or?
I think anyone can respond. I don't know who's the most adapted for this question, but also Adriano or Brunella, and I mean, any of you can respond.
Yeah, so can you repeat just the question, just to be sure to have it in mind correctly?
What do you think about implementing this kind of project in a large city with a large population, or a small city with a large population?
I think maybe, as Adriano said before, you only have to adapt the kind of services you offer, and to study also the place where you can put, for example, the sensor grid or the interactive totems, and all these services could be adapted to the specific city. Mm-hmm. So you can study where the life of the city is, where other services are, where population lives, and it's adaptable to every kind of city.
I also think that the number of the smart points, the totem that you have to put in place to have a meaningful infrastructure is changing, adapting to the size of the city. In a city like Bolzano, 3 totems are just enough to show something concrete to the people, something that you can touch, you can see. If you have a city 10 times larger, maybe you will need 10 times more totems. So the initial investment for the municipality will be much more higher, let's say 4 million euro instead of 400,000.
And you said that the market wasn't yet very...
If I can add, I think...
Yeah, go for it, Pietro.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. If I can add, I think there is also something that you should consider, that like the needs are changing. So, like for instance, I feel when we performed the questionnaire, it was still a quite high price for the connectivity using mobile phone, and nowadays we have quite large, let's say, mobile phone plan covering already quite a lot of traffic. So I guess that if we will perform the same questionnaire today, the willingness to pay, for instance, for the Wi-Fi hotspot would be really decreased respect to what it was some years ago. So I think this is also something that is so it is something that is present in the city, and but it should be I think a bit in a more dynamic way. It's not just fixed in every aspect.
Yeah, I totally agree with Pietro. I also have the impression that probably due to the modification of the mobile phone market, maybe it could be that in a city like Bolzano, Wi-Fi hotspots are now not so needed by the tourists. So, for example, in my personal experience, Wi-Fi hotspot, it's very useful if you are traveling as a tourist, for example, outside your continent. So if you are going to Asia, to America or similar, where you can have very expensive internet tariffs for your mobile phone, or you can have you are not compatible, your device is not compatible with the local grid. But probably in Europe now, all the citizens have the possibility to access a small amount or a reasonable amount of data within the monthly plan that they are paying. So it could be that in a city like Bolzano, we don't have a so huge amount of people coming from other continents, so maybe it's not interesting. Or on the other side, if you see that the number of people coming from Russia, from China or similar, it's increasing, maybe they can have some advantage to see the local hotspot Wi-Fi working for free.
And you said before that the market wasn't yet very developed. So are there like many cities, or not that many, which have developed this sort of solutions and smart points and smart totems, either in Italy or in Europe? Or is it something really innovative that Bolzano has done?
Yes, it is, because you have some example of other totems or similar installation all around the world. but in some cases they are just screens, so touch screen or similar, that provide information but cannot allow you to communicate in the two ways. So you just receive information, but you cannot interact with someone, let's say with a public office or similar. You just access a database or precompiled information. I think that what they did, what the municipality did in Bolzano, for example, combining something hard like a bump pumping station for the bikes with digital service, it's quite innovative.
Yeah, we have one last question in writing. So, are the smart points collecting information from a central server or directly from sensors around the city? And what are the connection technologies used, either fiber optics or Wi-Fi or LoRa or something else?
Yes, they collect information from the central station, our central management station, and with optical fiber, they are connected to this central station, and all the sensor grid sends in data to this central management station.
All right, thank you. And I know that before there was Maxim Koltunov who wanted to ask a question by speaking. So I don't know if Maxim is there, but I will give him the floor. Yes.
You hear me?
And yes, I can hear you. Hi, Maxim. Sorry for missing you before.
Yes. So thank you for the webinar. Like all speakers were giving very interesting information. And my question is mostly to Adriana, but as well to maybe the other speakers. It is about the drinkable water. Was the drinkable water really a significant and an important service according to the assessment? And how much money citizens were willing to pay for this service?
Yes, so in the end, the decision to include the drinkable water in the totem design was something that was discussed in the preliminary phase, where the overall design and concept of the infrastructure was quite open. So no decision were taken at that time, and we decided to keep that in the questionnaire. I already said that along the bike lanes in the squares of Bolzano there are a lot of public water points, so it's well covered, let's say, this service already in the city, and including that in the totem was too complicated, because we have to bear in mind that the prices that we shown to the interviewed people were theoretical prices that we decided. It was not something coming from the discussion with the designers about the real cost to implement an additional service in the infrastructure. So we have to keep a trade-off between the theoretical prices shown in the exercise, in the choice experiment exercise, and the real cost, for example, to add the drinkable water service to the totem as they are now designed. That means that you have to put the totem where the water is really available. You have to connect it to the piping system of the city. So you have to do additional requirements that will probably complicate too much the design of the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Well, I think that now we've run out of time and we have gone a little bit over time, so sorry about that. But since we had questions, I mean, it's always nice to answer them. So thank you everybody for joining. And in case you have some further questions, don't hesitate to send them to us via email, and we'll do our best to reply. I'm sure that both URAC and Municipality of Bolzano are happy to answer any questions. And I would like to thank Pietro, Adriano, and Brunella for these amazing presentations and for your participation in the webinar. Thank you very much. And as mentioned in the beginning, this is the last chapter, and we've recorded all the chapters, so you can find them on our website and easily review them as much as you want. And also you can find a recording of our final event where you can learn more about the SINFONIA results and the main findings of the project. So don't hesitate to have a look. And now we are also producing and finishing a final SINFONIA booklet, which will be publicly available. So I will distribute it to the attendees of this webinar, unless you tell me otherwise, so that you can also have a look and read it out, because it will summarize in a nice and attractive way the SINFONIA project and the main findings and its story behind. So yeah, thank you very much. And the presentations will be made available in the coming days, and also a short survey will appear once I close this webinar. So it would be really nice if you could give us a short feedback. And yeah, thanks a lot, and let's stay in touch. Goodbye.
Thank you to you, Martin, and to Greenovate for organizing.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.